Hey, it's Jeremy from jeremy.net. I'm a comic book artist, writer, creator, self-publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you enjoy these live streams and would like to get 2 additional bonus live streams a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get more in depth into my process and see what I'm working on throughout the month when I'm not live streaming, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. You'll also get a free digital sketchbook, blog post about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, work in progress, and gifts delivered right to your inbox. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. There you can pick up physical copies of my comic books. And they're also on the homepage of my YouTube channel. There are book flip throughs of all of these, so you can check them out, see what's inside the books before you buy. Okay, and before we dig in the Patreon live streams, we have one of those coming up this week, Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So for Patreon subscribers, you'll get a reminder post in the next day or two, and we'll have the links. You can watch the live stream. For those of you who have not signed up yet, sign up. And if you miss it, you can catch the replay. We have an archive of hundreds of hours of we call them art book study group that are already up there that you can watch and see. We're doing studies from some of the best art books around, trying to suck out all the knowledge we can. So with that out of the way, guys, I'm going to need your help. Those of you in the chat that are viewing right now, I see James is there already. He says, buy some comics. Yes, James, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm going to need your help with something. We're going to do a little exercise in trust here because I'm going to try something a little bit different. I'm doing a little bit of sketchbooking today. And I see King's Little Fitness is in the chat. So guys, tell me if when I switch my camera here, can you see my sketchbook and see my hand waving in front of it? Tell me if it's showing up in the screen, because for some reason in StreamYard, it says my camera's connected, but all I get is a big black screen. So it's not showing me anything. See, King's Little Fitness says yes. So perfect. That's the main thing I needed to know. Based on that, we're going to carry on. So it's completely faith that you guys are seeing what I'm drawing here while I'm drawing. If at any point something goes weird and you can't see what I'm working on, let me know. If we have to switch midstream to just going back to the tablet, then I will do so. But otherwise, we're going to go forward with this. So first off, let me explain to you. I'm finished the first pass of those storyboards that you guys saw me working on over the last couple of weeks. And normally I like to show you every stage of the process that I'm working through, because I like to show you the difficult parts and what it's like to go through problem solving. Because I think that's more important than just seeing someone producing a beautiful finished piece of artwork. That said, the thing that I'm on right now is I've got my first pass of my thumbnails done. I need to go back and work on adjusting the shots, the cuts when I'm cutting from one scene to the other. And I literally don't know how to do this while live streaming, because it involves not talking at all, being completely immersed in storytelling. Oddly enough, I can actually draw the original thumbnails while talking to people. But when it comes to sort of editing and visually paring down and focusing on what is and isn't working in the storytelling, my brain just can't do that while I'm streaming. Maybe someday I'll figure out how to do that, or maybe it's something where I can, record that process and then do a voiceover later on. But I decided to switch to something different for today. Let's see. King's Little Fitness says, I was drawing on paper earlier as well. Coincidence? Posting on your Discord. Yeah, I saw that. Some cool manga sketches. Thank you for sharing that. That's another thing on our Discord server for Patreons. We have different threads, one for just sharing works in progress, one for requesting feedback, and we just talk about what we're working on, what we're studying and what we're trying to get out of it, share shop talk. So it's another thing we have going on over there. Anyway, I decided that I'm going to do a couple. Well, I was going to start working on an original sketch, based on, let me see if I have it here on my phone. So I have a really rough thumbnail that I drew digitally. It's continuing my Medusa pieces, and basically it's taking the one Medusa Rising where she's kind of like in a pool of snakes and trying to draw something that's a little bit more of, well, what happened if she rose out of the pool of snakes? So it's almost like a part two to that piece. So let's see here. Anyway, I decided I'm going to draw this with some ink, some watercolor ink. And what I do is not watercolor, some fountain pen ink that I put into, these are Pentel watercolor brushes. So these are meant to just fill with water, and then you dip them into watercolor paints and you watercolor with a consistent tube of water, as opposed to having to wash your brushes constantly and add more water. I like these. And I decided to try filling them with fountain pen ink, because if you fill them with India ink, it'll eventually clog because the India ink dries, whereas fountain pen ink is meant to continually be fluid and water soluble. So if your brush ever does get filled up, you can just put water in and kind of flush it out. But I've also been wanting to work with washes. Now, I've done this where I've taken black ink and added mostly water with just like a couple of milliliters of ink, and that's given me a bit of a wash, but it just feels kind of diluted, and I wanted to try something a little bit different. So instead of filling this with water and a little bit of ink, I went on to a place called, let me write the name here in case any of you guys want to look it up, but they're similar to Jet Pens. It's another pen store called, here, let me do this in black ink. I want at least give the place that helped me out a shout out. It's called Goulet Pens. Goulet pens.com. And what I was looking for, and I couldn't find at Dick Blick, I could not find at Michael's, I could not find at Jerry's Artorama, I could not find this at any art supply store. What I found was this ink, Diametris Thinner for document inks. So what this is basically it's the fluid, the liquid part of ink without any pigment. And the reason why this is different is because when you use water to thin out an ink and create an ink wash, at some point it kind of makes the ink kind of like how paint has a binder. Ink has a binder as well. It just, the ink kind of breaks apart. So what I wanted was to get something that would give me a wash, but I wanted that wash to feel completely, I want it to feel like it was completely out of ink, like completely made of ink, as opposed to being too thin and too diluted. So right now, I just poured some ink into this brush, and it's mostly document thinner with a little bit of ink. And wow, it looks really blown out there. I almost wonder if I should turn down some of the lights just so it's not as bright. Maybe if I turn on the light that's on my face. Yeah, because when I look at this on the screen, my sketchbook looks super, super blown out. So I'm just doing a couple of sketches here because I'm trying to get the rest of the ink that was previously in this out and get to the wash. And the way I know that right now it's still mostly the previous ink that was in here is because this wash that I'm sketching with right now is kind of a blue-black, which is what you get when you thin out black. Kind of a cool color. And the ink that I put in here with the thinner is actually brown ink. Ooh, gotta be careful not to knock over my supplies here. So it is a Waterman's Absolute Brown ink. Let me go ahead and switch pages here. So before I get into sketching out those new pieces, I wanted to just make some marks with this, get some ink flowing. So I'm not really thinking about anything here, just drawing some faces and some figures. starting with just a simple head and neck. In fact, maybe I'll start sketching out some Medusa type qualities, just some simple serpents. Now, when I actually start working on Bristol board and drawing something that's going to be a finished illustration, I'm going to actually sketch in pencil first. But I wanted to see what happens, what kind of tone, how dark these tones that it gives me are. I mean, in theory, if the wash was light enough, which I can control how light or dark the wash is simply by adding either more ink or more thinner. But depending on how light the wash is, I could sketch with the wash even. But I'm very heavily big on, well, not that I intentionally want to be big on construction lines, but I'm very construction minded when I draw. So it's usually better to do my my opening marks and kind of like my construction in pencil. But that's when I'm doing a finished piece. When I'm just sketching, I mean, hell, I'll do the big old construction lines in ink. And yeah, it may look super blocky and rough, but you know, that's okay. It's just blocking things in. When I look at this on the camera, it still looks a little bit blurry. Let me see if I can get this a little bit closer to you guys. And I think the other problem that I have, and I really at some point just need to switch to getting a camcorder to do this. I'm supposed to trying to do this with a small webcam. The problem I get is I need more light in order for the image to be crisp. So if I don't put in a lot of light, it's slightly blurry. But if I do put in a lot of light, it gets really blasted out. Because even with this, I can feel every time I move something, the tone kind of shifts and the paper kind of pops like really bright white. Pull this up a little bit more. This is what I get for doing plans last minute. Because to be honest, I wasn't even sure what I was going to do for today's stream until kind of right before, and I just decided, screw it. Let's do this. So anyway, right now I'm just trying to get a sense of how light or dark this thing will go in terms of these washes. And then I've got some pre-drawn boards off to the side here. So these are, I want to say 9x6 mixed media boards from Strathmore. Basically, it's like Bristol board. If I squeeze a little bit, that kind of gets a little bit more of the fluid running through here. It still very much feels like it's mostly giving me ink from the last filling of black. then all of a sudden I can feel there's a difference here, a shift where it goes from being really scratchy. Like some of these lines feel more broken up to all of a sudden it feels like it's a more solid line. Like more of the fluid, more of the thinner just started flowing through the brush. In fact, that's something I have to be careful of, because if there's too much flowing through, then it really does become hard to control, like watercolor. Which is a really cool effect if that's what you are intentionally going for. But there's that line between giving up control to get a nice organic feel versus having no control at all. And I want to make sure to stay on the right side of that line. So right now, this is less about demonstrating anything particular about drawing craft. And it really is just experimenting with my materials and learning what my materials will do. And I don't know how much you guys play with that as well. But there's something that I think is really important about understanding and learning how to control our tools. Because for the longest time, I would draw and not be able to get my materials, whether it was inking in comics with a brush, or drawing in Procreate with a new digital craft, or especially all of the time that I've spent drawing in charcoal pencil in figure drawing classes, where it wasn't necessarily that I was a bad artist. It was that I did not know how to control my tools. And something that I've learned whenever I get a brush pack, a digital brush pack that I really like, or if I just get a new drawing tool, I will just sit and do like pages and pages of sketches with that tool, just testing out how does it do when I'm drawing figures? How does it do when I'm drawing a portrait? How does it do when I'm doing like a vehicle or a creature? Like how much control do I have over hard to soft lines? Ellipses. Is it easy to draw ellipses at different angles? To turn ellipses. In fact, that's something that I realized the other day. Like that's just a good experiment in general when you're trying to develop your drawing control, is to draw in ellipses and then draw it going, let me move this up here, going around like a clock. And ideally, these ellipses are not particularly precise. But in a perfect world, what you would be able to do is draw it at each ellipses at the same degree. And even that I turned too quickly. Like these 1 and 2 are too similar, and then 3 is too big of a jump. So I messed up on 2. Point of this exercise is drawing a series of ellipses at approximately the same degree and being able to do a full 12 of them to go all the way around a circle. Then draw them at either a narrower degree or a wider degree. And basically, if you can do a full range from like a super narrow, that wasn't very good, but that wasn't very good either. That was even worse. Try horizontally. A very, very narrow ellipse versus a perfect circle. And if you can go through that range of different degrees of ellipses and then do them all the way around, that will develop an incredible amount of control. And learning to be able and having the ability to do that with pretty much any drawing tool, to me, that's like a sign of mastery. Now I can see as I go back up here and I shift it up here, the ink is now starting to shift in color. So as you can see, yes, it's drawing, but this is sort of a cooler color. And then you move up here, this is a mark that I just put in, and it's a little bit warmer. It's almost like it's going from a cold blue to slightly purplish. But to me, what that is the ink, the brown ink that's in here, is slowly starting to come out. And you can even compare with these lines here. It's hard to see the color when you look at it on camera, but when I look at this in real life, this is slightly grayer, and this is slightly, it's got the barest of a sepia tint to it. So it's slowly starting to warm up. The brown ink that I put in here is coming out. And let me see if I actually have, just for comparison, let me see if I have a pen that has the brown ink in it. Let's see here. I see James got a couple comments in the chat. Let's see here. So James says there are many ways to create visual interest. You were talking about sci-fi last time, so I thought I would recommend Save the Green Planet. It's South Korean, and there's visually interesting part involving a swarm of bees. Is that an anime or a South Korean manhwa? I will let me make a note here. Save the Green Planet. Let's see here. James says, control. Yes, controlling lines is something I have to do, especially when I commit to a drawing. What's funny is I also still have problems with doing clean work. And I find, like, for instance, when I switch to, in fact, I think I'm going to switch now. When I switch to just drawing a finished piece, it is very, very hard for me to just draw something that is clean and pristine, like right off the bat. I have to have an underdrawing. I keep doing sketches like what I did here in my sketchbook, where I'm trying to build up to a something that's more solid. But by nature, I tend to need loose marks to put my finished line over. So instead of trying to force myself to be cleaner, I just do that rough pass and do a cleanup. And it's kind of, I've found over the course of doing that, it allows me, I gradually have made my rough drawings cleaner, and I also make my cleanup drawings looser. So they're kind of meeting in the middle. And I found that very, very pleasing. James also says that Save the Green Planet's a South Korean live action movie. So I will put that on my watch list. I don't know how soon I will get to it, but I'm going to put it on my watch list. Now, I'm coming back to what I dreaded earlier, which is futzing with my camera. But I'm going to move this up so you'll be able to at least see the full thing while I'm blocking this in. Turn on my phone here and have my my rough sketch open. Let's see here. Still bugs me that this looks a little bit grainy to me. Man, I gotta get a new camera. Let me put this over here so I can see that while I'm working. So the one thing I'm going to start with is here. Let me come back and show you. So this is the sketch that I'm going to be refining. And I'm going to start with, oddly enough, not the figure, but the horizon line, which is down here, basically going through just above her knee. And then these perspective lines, because I haven't even really thought about what the background is going to be in this. But I wanted to start with something very, very dramatic feeling. And drawing her into this perspective is going to kind of give me that sense of kind of a triumphant, majestic feel with this low angle looking up at her. So let's start here. Let's say horizon's right about there. And I'm curious if you guys are able to actually see these lines, because I'm drawing the way I draw for a finished illustration, which is very light, as light as I'm capable of. I know some artists who they do their underdrawing and it's barely perceptible. I think that I actually don't draw as light as I should when I'm blocking in a piece. Apologies for blocking the screen at some points, but I need to rotate my hand at certain angles to get the arc that I want. Kingslow Fitness says the quality is in your speech, no worries on the video. Well, you know what though? I look at people that have really beautiful 4K YouTube videos, and it's 4K of like their work and their drawing table, and I aspire to upping my production quality to something where it almost looks like a documentary film on drawing, because that's what I see in the live streamers and the YouTubers I see whose work I admire. Their work is of that quality. And I think in the same way that I'm always working on improving my illustration craft, it's not envy. It's that when I see people doing excellence, it makes me want to rise to that occasion. Like comparisonitis, I think, is a bad thing when you look at what other people are doing and you say, I suck because I'm not as good as them. That is unhealthy. When you look at somebody who is doing something great and it is aspirational, like they're showing you there's a stairway here, and if you go up this stairway, there's another level, and come on up. It's the climb is hard, but when you get up here, the view is beautiful. That's how I look at it. So I think for a lot of things, I try to take a lot of the negative self-talk that artists have, and I have that negative self-talk too in my own head. It's something that all of us struggle with. And what I try to do is I try to take the negative and transform it into something that is positive, that is useful, that is productive. Let's see here. And James says, I don't know if she's standing in water, but I was able to make out the perspective on your phone. I mean, she's not standing in water. She's standing in, let me grab it real quick. So there is a digital piece that I did last year, and it is sort of damn it, dropping all kinds of stuff now. So it is a digital piece, and it's a wider angle shot. It's a vertical composition instead of horizontal, but it is a Medusa, a Gorgon, coming out of a pool of snakes. And I did it in a bunch of different color schemes, so I couldn't decide which one I liked. And I like that image, and I like the final one that I did. But I'm one of those people who, when I do a piece, I see multiple different versions of ways of executing it. And I've kind of shifted from, instead of trying to find the right version of a piece, I'll just do, 3 or 4 different versions. So the idea that I could get multiple compositions out of a single illustration To me, that's sort of the approach that I have when I'm doing these pieces. It's just, let me come back and take another shot. And King's Low Fitness says, lower the opacity to lighten more. I will tell you that it's definitely odd in this age of drawing that when I'm drawing traditionally, sometimes I'll make a mistake, and like it used to be that my left hand would go Control Z, like it would just do that automatically. Like my hand is expecting to be able to undo it. And now, since I've been drawing in Procreate, I'll make a mistake and my hand will immediately go the double tap undo. And I'm like, there's no undo in real life. There's this. There's the eraser. But there is no undo. And it is amusing to me that I find that I think a lot of artists who have done a fair amount of traditional work have that issue. So let me see here. Block her knee in about here. Let's have her arm kind of flow down like this. And she's kind of like got a come at me pose. Like she's like, I'm surrounded by my posse of snakes. If you want to try and come at me, you can, but probably not going to end well for you. I want to round the top of her rib cage a little bit more to give more of a sense of her leaning back. And I think I have her rib cage turned too much to the right, and I'm actually going to change this angle so it's pointing a little bit to the left. Just so she's getting a little bit of a twist. Little contrapposto. One of the things I find so challenging are the subtleties. Like when you have somebody who's doing a very, very hard twist, like where's my little figures here? When you've got someone and they're dramatically twisting hips to the right, hips turning this way, shoulder turning that way. When you have them doing a dramatic twist, it's very noticeable and it's pretty easy to capture. But when you are trying to do a very subtle twist and you want it to feel dynamic, but you want it to be like just a little bit, like one is just twisting this way and the other one's just twisting that way. I find those subtleties compelling, but challenging. Like to me, that's the thing that when I look at other artists who do that, I'm like, oh, it feels dynamic without trying. I guess what I'm saying is that I am not a very subtle person. So I admire those who pull off subtleties in their work and can make those subtleties look effortless. And it's funny that I thought to myself, oh, I'm just going to do a really simple, quick sketch here, because the Medusas are never quick pieces, only in that just working out the hair alone is usually quite the feat, because it's so easy for it to just turn into a squiggly mess. I've got my handy dandy electric Sakura eraser here. This thing, worth its weight in gold. I don't know what they go for online because I've had to replace one time. And I think that they were originally $20. They've gone up to 30. I don't know what they go for now, but it gives you the precision of a pencil in your erasing. And I will tell you, I don't know where my arrogance comes from. I actually even had planned to do 2 drawings, and I had a second board ready. I was like, in case I blow through the first one. I think that's also another thing. It's like you watch so many speed paintings and time lapses, and you just start thinking that in one session you're going to be able to knock out some amazing piece. But I think you guys have seen by the amount of time I spend per illustration that it's not a slog because I enjoy it, but it is not. Craft is not instantaneous. Producing a piece that has all the dynamics and structure and anatomy, but it still has that energy of the sketch. Capturing all those things does not come out quickly. And the fact that I still need to figure out exactly what I want to do. Like both of these arms, the hands are not giving me exactly what I want. This is one of those cases where you do the rough sketch, and the rough sketch, you spend the rest of the time chasing the sketch. But that, I mean, even though the rough sketch is very flawed, as you begin to, damn it, drop my eraser. As you begin to refine the drawing, little bits of whatever is that initial magic that the drawing had, you're constantly trying to capture that. Like a little scribbly line that implies the twist or turn of the wrist. You're chasing those little things. I'm trying to keep in mind the fact that even with this, I've got that low horizon line, that even her pelvis is still above the horizon. And I should remember to capture the sense of her pelvis coming towards us because it's above us. Not coming towards in very super force perspective. It's not like we're standing like right at her feet. But when you're looking up at something, it's sort of tilted away from you. And realizing I need to put a little bit more twist into her hips. I hear my girl Khaleesi in the background. What? What's wrong? I don't know what she's doing. Sometimes they just come in and just meow just to want to shout out. All right. What's weird is I keep moving the drawing up and out of the frame, but that's so I can see over the camera. And I tell myself, oh, I'll just move the camera up. But the problem is if I move the camera up, I'm still going to be looking around this thing. I'm going to switch back to that bright light that I had before. And tell me if this makes a difference in terms of the clarity of the drawing, or whether it just makes the whole thing look blown out. Because when I look at it, it just looks blown out to me. But overexposed, too much light, not enough dark. That's what I see. But move this over a little bit more. You know, it's weird because with the anatomy, it's almost like I'm trying to play with it and see how far I can go before I break it. Like, how far can I push the anatomy before you're like, no, that doesn't work? And I think part of the problem I'm having here when I keep drawing and redrawing her lower leg and her knee is that I need to intentionally give the sense of her leg turning or facing, just that her knee should be a little bit more this way. Because I'm tweaking her hips to turn her hips that way. Let's see here. Kingslow Fitness says that the picture does come out clearer and darker a bit. So if that is a positive, then I will leave that on. It sounds like a positive. All right. Yeah, I really thought most of this video was going to be about me experimenting with these ink washes, and it is just me sketching a figure, really. Because I'm looking at this, I'm looking at, damn, it's already been almost an hour. And I'm not done with the block in. And I thought that I would be. for as much as I whine and moan about needing to really understand volume and make things feel structural and three-dimensional, right now I'm mentally trying to just break this figure down into flat two-dimensional shapes, strengthen her silhouette, and then pull detail and volume out of that silhouette. Because right now it's like I can feel a strong silhouette in some parts and a weak silhouette in others. Like her silhouette is sort of strong around the head and neck, and it's kind of like strong on the right side of the hips, weak on the left side. And I completely keep reworking her silhouette on her leg and on her left side. I mean, it's almost like I feel like I want to get her shoulder and her arm on her right worked out so that I can come to the left side with a little bit more strength. And I think the problem I'm running into is that I want her arm to cut in like this, but cutting in like that makes the anatomy of where her hand is just not work. Because I would need her arm to come almost all the way down there and then come out from behind. Yeah, I need to go back to stick figure mode and just say, all right, what on a stick figure level do I need to happen here? Let's see here. And King's Low Fitness says, seems like it comes back down to the original books like Andrew Loomis and George Bridgman. I only got to clean up more. I will tell you from the sketches you have posted on the Discord, I think that just taking those rough sketches you do, I think that if you just sit there and experiment with doing like cleanup drawings over them, just putting a new layer on if you're drawing digitally, or if you're drawing in a sketchbook or on paper, maybe taking, I don't know, if it's a drawing you don't care about possibly destroying, because you're going to have to destroy some drawings to do it, but just maybe doing a cleanup with a Sharpie and forcing yourself to take something that, because even with mine, you can see that I'm building like multiple lines. I talk all the time about doing one confident stroke, but I am building this with multiple lines. But the idea of taking something that's kind of built up scratchily and breaking it down into one or two or three solid strokes, or like drawing a whole stick figure with one line with like a Sharpie, not the super thin Sharpies and not the fat Sharpies, but like, where are my Sharpies? Oh, here are my Sharpies. So I wouldn't use these because these are the ultra fine point, and these are pretty much like using a micron. They're pretty much like using either a marker or drawing with a pencil. You'll still do scratchy marks with them. But if you go the next one up, which is just the fine point, they give you a thick line, and it's harder to do loose sketches with these. Let me put it this way. It's not that it's hard to do loose sketches. It breaks the sketch down into, once you put this big ass mark there, it's like, this mark is not like you can't draw little pieces of the arm unless you're drawing on like a huge sheet of paper. You draw a line, that's the whole arm. And the hand unto itself is like a flipper. So like when you look at this sketch that I did digitally, the fact that like, for instance, the arm on the right side is just one stroke. There's no volume there. It's just a stick figure for the whole thing. And it's not that you need to draw that way forever, but imagine if all of the small lines that you take to build up one stroke, if you can do that in, say, half as many lines, literally you're doubling your drawing output. You can do twice as many drawings just using half as many lines to do. But it is something that it requires intentional practice. You have to decide that you're going to try to do drawings with these bulky blocks of line, because you're going to be fighting against your current drawing instincts, your current process. And building new habits, changing your process is one of the most difficult things to do. So I'm actually moving now. I'm putting the elbow kind of behind here and making the arm come out that way. And I don't like it. And I kind of said I don't like it, like with a sense of finality, like I'm going to come back in and change it. But sometimes when I am fighting with something in a drawing, I will intentionally shift away from the thing that I'm fighting with. So I was having trouble with that hand. I'm switching to the other hand almost to see if I can come back to that first one and get what it is that I'm trying to pull out of the work. Let's see here. Kingslow Fitness says, I got the marker that's chisel cut, if that makes sense. Yeah, I know the chisel markers. You can work with that. And he says, I'll keep in mind with building line work further, as I've seen C and S curves, especially in drawing hair. Yes, C and S curves everything is made out of lines, C curves, and S curves. And I think one of the more challenging things is drawing a subtle C curve. So instead of drawing it like a C, but to do that thing where it's just a slight arc, or an S that's a slight S as opposed to a dramatic S. Subtlety is sort of like the next step of evolution. Because once you develop control, then it's like, all right, how do I make this the thing that I see in my head? So I think that's the big challenge that we're all chasing, is that what we see in our head is infinitely more beautiful than what we get on the page. And that can be frustrating. And no one likes to be frustrated. I mean, to a certain degree, I feel like maybe we do. Otherwise, we wouldn't be artists, because why would we pick something that's so damn hard? But we like frustration to a point. And beyond that point, we're like, okay, this just sucks. maybe what I need to do is, even though I have her tilted, maybe I need to raise her shoulder up a little bit so I can get that. Because what I'm trying to get is, in this sketch, there's just a nice way that this arm frames and contrasts with what her body is doing, with what her torso and thigh is doing. And I'm trying to get her arm to do the same. But in doing that, I'm making her arm too, her upper arm too short and her lower arm too long. That's the thing that I'm sitting here trying to resolve. Of course, I can make her arm shorter. I know I said that I was kind of looking at it in a flat two-dimensional thing, but I just realized I can use proportion and perspective to kind of help by making, what if I've got this arm going back more dynamically and this arm coming front more dynamically? The problem is that this would still need to be in front of her to some degree, her hip, if that arm is going back like that. But I think there might be something in this as a solution. All right, so we are at an hour. I'm going to go for another 5, maybe 10 minutes, and then we're going to cap it. So if anyone has any questions, now is the time to ask them, because we are winding up the stream. And ridiculously, we didn't get anywhere near what I thought the bulk of the video was going to be. I really thought it was all going to be ink work. And it is not ink work. Let's see here. Kingslow Fitness says, I see vice versa. It's sketchy in my head where I can go for the goal of cleaning up the blur in my head. Mine wear glasses and all I see is blur or silhouette of everything. He says maybe that's how Kim Jong-il came to his visualizations during his journey wearing glasses. He said the bulk is the first draft. Yeah, well, see, that's the funny thing is I have found that by really cutting down, using fewer lines even at that first draft stage, it helps me refine the later stages quicker. I don't know if you saw in the Discord the last couple of days where I posted thumbnails from a study that I was doing. I was doing studies based on a schoolism course that I took, and I looked at the instructor, some of the boards she did. Alessandra Sorrento, she teaches a storyboarding class on schoolism, and I went to her portfolio and looked at some storyboards she did for the Netflix movie Nimona. Sorry, brain loopy, drawing, same time, speak. To kind of study where she cut, why she cut, what motivated the cuts and the changes of angles, like what motivated it story-wise or visual continuity-wise. And in studying those, I was drawing all the storyboards with just, head, body, just very simple blocks, and just doing them, trying to get the relationship between the figures and the composition correct. But in doing that, it really made me think, wow, you can really work out a lot of the fundamental parts of the study of any drawing if you do all of that part first. Which is the reason why I am so obsessed with thumbnailing and stick figures. It's because I feel like if you can make whatever it is you're trying to get out of your head work as a stick figure, then it's like, all right, you've done the hard part, creating a composition and a gestural flow that is compelling. That is the hardest part. I am not a master of rendering, and I do believe that rendering well is challenging. It's not one of my strengths, but I believe that it is actually, while it is not something I am strong at, I do believe that it is easier than the compositional part. Creating a compelling composition. And I guess what I'm doing right now is I'm just sort of shifting things back and forth, a little bit higher, a little bit lower, trying to find the just right. Like imagine you're in a room and you're just moving the furniture around, trying to get that feng shui just right. You're like, this looks here. No, it doesn't look good there. Just going back and forth, trying to get it just right. That is sort of the drawing equivalent of what I'm doing right now. Just shifting pieces around. Let's see here. So James says, I'm thinking about how I've been messing with faces lately, what with masks and organ shapes. I did mention controlling lines. So in some cases, it makes sense to draw a shape with a circle and a bottom portion and merge them. In other cases, I can draw the faces all as one shape. I'm wondering what your thoughts are. My thoughts are exactly the same as yours. Structure and the beginning primitive shapes and forms we use to build a composition are on a case-by-case basis. When possible, I think it is best to make everything in one form and then find the subforms within it. But sometimes just in order to get the dynamics of what you want, if it's the twist of a rib cage, or in the case of a faces, if that the nose is going to make a specific shape, that the way the plane breaks out of the mass of the head, or the ears or whatever it is, then sometimes it's a matter of just to get what you want, you need two different shapes. Sometimes when I start blocking in the head, sometimes I will block in the head and I'll just do a whole egg that is the head. Sometimes, depending on the angle that I'm doing it, I need to block in the mass of the skull first as a sphere. And then sometimes I will block in the other part of that egg as the jaw. Sometimes I need to get an angle, and I will say, here's the jaw turning this way. Here's the front plane of the face. Here's the jaw coming up on the other side. Here's the cheekbone on the opposite side turning away. I'll block in all of those things. It just depends on the angle and what expresses the concept that I'm trying to get out of my head. So the fact that you're open to doing it different ways is useful, is good. It's good because you have to be able to adapt when you try whatever your tried and true is, and it doesn't work. You need to be able to adapt and shift and try different things. And what I would say, the tried and true is always, if you can draw, an entire figure, like let's say that I just draw a whole line, like just an arc like this. That's just an arc. It's a C curve. But you put a head on it, now it's a person. It's a person in a cloak, maybe a person in a dress, maybe just a guy who's big and beefy and he's, kind of got his shoulders dropped. Maybe it's Hellboy, who is huge and massive, but still has this angular slope in his torso. It could be a lot of different things, but that is my thought in terms of how to approach that. And back to the thumbnails that I was sharing on our Discord, our Patreon Discord. King's Low Fitness says, I saw that, was wondering how it was looking, like if Roblox looking characters. Well, I included a link to the actual boards that I was working from, so you can see what the original storyboards that I was studying from look like. If you follow that link to Alessandra Sorrento's portfolio. And then on top of that, the movie itself, the trailer for the movie's on Netflix. So if you just type in Nimona, it's let me do it in my sketchbook. So I keep writing and there's gonna be a bunch of stuff ghosted on that drawing. So I keep writing and drawing on that. Let me do it on my sketchbook instead. But the movie is called Nimona. It's on Netflix. So you can go and check out the movie itself, or just look at the trailer on YouTube. And then the artist whose storyboards I was looking at, the link is on the Discord server, but her name is Alessandra Sorrentino. And if you Google her name, her portfolio will come up. And if you go to her storyboards, she'll have animatics she did of her boards for that movie. So that's what I was doing studies from. Because I just thought she's very, very good in her course on explaining shot composition and creating narrative flow, perspective, all the different things that are necessary for doing storyboards. But when I did my roughs, which I finished the roughs that I've been showing you guys over the past couple of weeks, and they just didn't flow properly in terms of the cuts weren't necessarily paced as well as they could be. And they weren't necessarily motivated as well. Like in terms of when I moved to the next shot, did it sync up to the shot before? Is there a logical reason why I've switched angles? What am I showing? Am I conveying emotion by the shot that I chose? Am I conveying story by the shot that I chose? Is it clear? The visual geography of the scene, all those things are stuff that I'm trying to work out. And that was something that I was like, you know what? I can't do this during a live stream because I can't talk to anyone. I really need to just be immersed in the story and figure out, because it's like I need to pull into my imagination, pull out what is the clearer version of this. Anyway, I think that is good for today. Again, appreciate you guys hanging out with me. All the great conversation and comments as ever. That's always what makes these streams worthwhile. And again, speaking of live streams, we're doing Art Book Study Group this Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And these aren't just normal, like our hour-long live streams. These are 2.5, 3 hour long live streams where we do deep dives to some of the best art books around. We have been doing a long-running series of studies on Walt Reed's The Figure, which I think is one of the best books on fundamentals out there. So if you guys want to join us, it's as little as $2 a month. You'll get access to an entire back catalog of hundreds of hours of live streams on top of that. So definitely head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. There are links in the description for this video, as well as if you're watching on Twitch, there will be links from the About tab. You can always find all this at my home website at jeremy.net. And if you would like to see what else I'm working on throughout the month, just dig deeper into my process, be able to email me and talk back and forth about what I'm working on. You can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. You'll also get a free digital sketchbook, blog post about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively. So head on over, sign up for that. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, my first book, Eye of the Gods, a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control, or Morning Star, This First Fall from Heaven, told as a Western in 2 volumes. Volume 2 is the conclusion to the 8-issue series. Both volumes have extensive back matter, character sketches, thumbnails, photo reference, and more. basically show you how I put these books all together. You can pick up all of these at amazon.jeremy.net. If you read digitally, you can buy them on Kindle. And there are book flip throughs on the homepage of my YouTube channel if you want to see what they look like before you buy. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate the encouragement, and I hope that I'm encouraging you. That's it for now. Go be creative.